Today's speaker is Aaron Sherman. He is from the class of 2006. He is the senior speechwriter for our U.S. Secretary of Defense, Ash Carter, right now. So very cool. We're very lucky to have him today. It's a very busy time for him. So please give him a round of applause and welcome to the stage.
Thank you. So I'm Aaron Sherman. Nice to meet all of you. I'm told that these normally are slideshows. People on these things normally have slideshows. But where I work, Department of Defense, slideshows can be not exactly fun. This is an actual slide that has been used in meetings in the Pentagon, and it's terrible. And I don't want to subject you to anything like that. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to focus on something very simple, which is how I got from there on the left in 2006 to there on the right in 2016 and that's my boss, the secretary. So where to start? Because in part, when I was here, I was not actually someone who was interested in writing, which, I don't know, may seem a little odd. Why would someone who doesn't like writing go on to be a writer? I still don't really know the answer. But one thing that I did enjoy at the time was my journalism class. And I guess I wasn't too bad at it because I got an award of some kind. And basically, the thing that interested me about journalism was that I liked politics, I liked current events. I didn't necessarily like reading a book for literature class or whatever and then having to write an essay on it every week. But this was something different. It was something that I could kind of look at something that was interesting to me or that was, made me curious and that I had questions about that I wanted to learn more about, and I could dig into it myself and then write about whatever I found interesting or new, what happened. So as I said, Mr. Sim said, I graduated in 2006, and I didn't exactly take a normal path from there, so to speak. I took what's called a gap year program. How many of you guys have heard of a gap year? That's pretty good. I can tell you that 10 years ago, way fewer hands would have gone up. But basically, for those of you who haven't heard of gap year, it's basically where you take a year after high school or sometimes even after college, and you maybe travel or you volunteer or you do something basically that's kind of off the beaten path for someone, or what parents might expect of you or what you might have planned to do. Kind of broaden your horizons and get new experiences, and hopefully helps you grow. Cool thing, take time and learn. So I did that after high school for a year. I did a program called Nati, which actually means path in Hebrew. It's in Israel, and so I did that for an academic year, basically 9 months, and then I went to UC Davis, just down the road. The reason why I went to UC Davis, first of all, it's a good school. So any of you who were thinking about going there, go ahead. But one of the things that I found appealing about UC Davis, or really any UC school, is that it had a UC Washington program. That's kind of up there on the right. And what that is it's a quarter, or really a trimester long program where, and I did this the fall of my senior year, basically, where you go and you live and work in Washington, D.C., you have a full-time internship, a research seminar, and an elective course, and there's a whole building where everyone lives in dorms. It's kind of just like college, except you're in Washington, D.C. And the reason why I found that appealing was because I knew that I wanted to live and do something, work in Washington, D.C. I just loved the feeling of it, loved the place, and I almost actually went to school in D.C. at George Washington University. But after kind of doing a year on the other side of the world, I figured it might be a little nice to spend the next few years a little bit closer to home. So I went to UC Davis and loved it, and I did the Washington program. And as I said, we have a full-time internship, and my internship there was actually, funnily enough, it's where I work now. It was at the Pentagon in the speechwriting office of the then Secretary of Defense, Robert Gates. I knew that I wanted to do something speechwriting related. I was an international relations major at the time. I liked foreign policy, national security, kind of the debates and discussions about where we are as a country in the world and what's necessary to keep the country safe and the American people safe, and to kind of advance our values and agenda around the world, and hopefully inspire other nations to join us in doing so. And so it turned out that there were two potential speechwriting internships. As luck would have it, and this was kind of a right place at the right time sort of thing, which happens again and again sometimes, at least it did for me, was that the director of the UC Davis Washington program at the time had been a former speechwriter. And he knew a couple speechwriters in the Obama administration. This was for the early days in 2009 in the fall. And one of them was a speechwriter for Susan Rice, who was at the time the ambassador to the UN for the United States. And the other one was the speechwriter to the Secretary of Defense. And it just turned out that the kind of background check clearance process took less time at the Pentagon than it did at the State Department for the UN ambassador. So that's how I ended up at the Pentagon, and I loved it so much. It was kind of weird, like getting up at 6 a.m. and like being excited to go into work. I had never kind of imagined that would be something that I would enjoy. But once I kind of got a taste of it, I loved it, and I wanted that feeling. Kind of everything else that I did or felt like I would try and pursue in terms of the job and life after school. So I did that. I loved it. It was great. I went back to Davis the fall of my senior year, so I finished up. While I was at Davis, I continued to write every now and then on issues that mattered to me. So this was an op-ed that I wrote in the California Aggie, the Davis newspaper. I wasn't on the staff of the newspaper at any point in college, but like I was here at Korea for the year I did journalism senior year. But every now and then there would be something that happened on campus that got me kind of worked up, and so I would write an op-ed or a letter to the editor or something like that, and it would get published. Cool. And I found out later that when you want to be a speechwriter, everyone asks you for writing samples. And so this was kind of a nice kind of early repository of published writing samples that I had that I could give to people who I was kind of hoping would take a chance on being a shot at being a speechwriter. After I graduated from UC Davis in 2010, I sort of, if you will, did another gap year, if you will, insofar as that I went back to Israel for another year and I staffed the program that I did after high school. It was kind of a way of sort of giving back to a program that meant a lot to me and kind of helped me grow and learn a lot before I even started college. And so I did a year doing that. And then when I came back to the States, this was in 2011, I faced kind of a fork in the road, a decision point. I had two sort of opportunities in front of me. And one of them was in San Francisco, which is great. I love the Bay Area. I was lucky to grow up here, and I'm lucky to be able to live and work here someday. And the job offer was for the San Francisco Jewish Community Relations Council, and it was reaching out to, it was like working with college campuses in Northern California about kind of Israel issues and stuff like that, Middle Eastern issues. And that was something that I had done as in college. And so I felt very confident I was good at it, but it wasn't necessarily something that I felt like I wanted to do more. I kind of felt like I had done that. And I wanted to maybe try something else. What I really wanted to do was move to Washington, D.C., try and find a job in speech writing. God knows how I would have done it. The other choice that was in front of me was, frankly, not as good, if you will, of a choice as the one in San Francisco. This was in Chicago, and it was for an unpaid internship with President Obama's re-election campaign. And the way I ended up having that kind of as the other choice to choose from was kind of, again, right place, right time. I was searching for things in DC. This was like August 2011. I was sitting in my bedroom at home, my parents' house, like Googling for jobs in DC, speechwriting related. I was kind of systematically lowering my standards of what kind of a job I considered speechwriting related. And then I kind of saw just on a whim this posting for a campaign, a fall internship, just for 3 or 4 months in Chicago at the Obama campaign, re-election campaign headquarters. And you couldn't request speech writing per se, but you could request like departments, and one of them was communications, which is where in politics speech writing is usually part of that. And so I kind of just applied on a whim, thinking it would be like the only political related thing outside of DC that I would consider doing. And it turned out that that very same morning, like within a matter of hours of when I fired off that application, the director of speech writing on the campaign decided he wanted an intern for the fall. And my resume was the first and really only one to come in across his desk with any speech writing related experience on it, because in part because when I was at UC Davis, I had done that internship at the Pentagon speech writing office there during when I was in DC for the Washington program. So that was an unpaid internship, just to be clear, and it was kind of up against a job in San Francisco that was totally paid, great benefits, blah 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 blah. It was kind of a take the safe choice or take the riskier choice, because you never. I don't know if you've been following this most recent election, but you never really know how politics are actually going to work out. Sometimes they work out the way you think they're going to, sometimes they don't. So going to Chicago would have been a pretty big risk, and I would have had to kind of figure out a way to kind of survive for those 3 months where they definitely wouldn't pay me, and then there wasn't a guarantee that I would get a job afterward. It was kind of like, maybe if we like you or if you do a good job and we can find the money to hire you, maybe we'll think about it. But by no means anything guaranteed. So I kind of debated about that for a while. But then what I realized is that if I had gone with the choice of San Francisco, I would have regretted not choosing Chicago every day, probably, as I would have seen like news about the campaign every few weeks and stuff, and more as it got closer to election day in 2012. So I decided to go with the internship in Chicago, and it was great. I guess I did a good enough job that by the end of the internship, this was kind of the end of 2011, beginning of 2012, they offered me a job on the speech writing team as a writer researcher, and it was kind of a pretty small shop, in part because the way re-election campaigns work is that usually the people who write for the president, the first lady, the vice president, they're their normal speech writers. So they were all working in the White House, that sort of thing. And what we did was we would basically write everything else for the campaign. So if the president goes out to a college campus in Ohio and gives a campaign speech, usually there will be like a lot of local elected officials and maybe some celebrities or some kind of, we call them on the campaign, this is a terrible term, but real people, like an average person who supports the president or is volunteering for the campaign maybe, and they have a story to tell about why they're doing it. And so we would script out all of those remarks for them at every single campaign. And so that got pretty busy, especially toward the end when the president's doing 3 events a day, the vice president's doing 4, the first lady's doing a couple. It got pretty busy, and we also did scripts for campaign conference calls with reporters and talking points that would be blasted out to the entire Democratic Party every single morning. So it got pretty busy. And one of the things that we wrote a lot of were introductions of the president. These were always done by those kind of real people. And they always had a really compelling story about why they supported the president. And so what we would do is we would get on the phone with them, and we would just basically, we didn't have a lot of time, so we would just say, "Hi, my name's Aaron, great to meet you. Tell me about yourself and why you support the president." And we would let them talk, we would take notes, and then we'd draft up a couple minutes of an introduction for them to the president, send it back to them, maybe they have some edits or stuff, we'd work that back and forth with them, and we'd, once it got finalized, they would kind of take it from there. And so, we didn't write for the president that often, sometimes a little bit for some smaller things. But one of the cool things, at least for me, was that, before he went out on every single campaign rally, he was listening to something that we wrote, that I wrote. And it was like important to get him kind of set in the right mood to go out and try to win the votes of the American people. And that got to be pretty impactful for me, in part because one of the introductions that I wrote had an impact on someone who listened to it. And so I just want to play for you a clip. This is from the president's re-election night, or I'm sorry, re-election victory night. It was election night victory speech in 2012. We won. You can probably figure out. Can we hit the space bar? Volume?
No.
Okay. That's obviously Barack Obama. Turn off the microphone. Okay, I don't know if this works. But basically what you would hear him doing is basically telling the story of one of the people who introduced him, especially toward the end of the campaign in a place called Menor, Ohio. But a little girl who almost died of leukemia, if not for Obamacare being passed into law a few months before. And it was, I guess it was one of the better introductions that I wrote, but the story was just so good it basically wrote itself. It was so compelling and so powerful. And his daughter was there at the event with him, and it kind of moved everyone to tears in the room when he told this story. And so that night, I'm standing there in McCormick Place in Chicago, where the victory, where election night was happening, and it caught me totally by surprise that the president was talking about something I wrote. He obviously didn't use my name or anything like that, but it was just wow, I do in really sort of small way, and that was really powerful. So, like I said, we won obviously, and so I went from being a writer researcher on the writing team on the campaign to working on the president's inauguration. I was a staff writer for that, and shortly thereafter, I started working back at the Pentagon. I wanted to, during the time of the inauguration, that's when a lot of the people who worked on the campaign. I moved to DC by that point in Chicago, and I knew that I wanted to continue speech writing and hopefully do so in kind of the national security role. So I ended up to go back to the Pentagon, which is where I work now. And so I worked for two secretaries of defense. One on the left is Chuck Hagel. He was the 24th Secretary of Defense. He served from February 2013 to February 2015, and he was succeeded by Ash Carter, who I write for now. And they're both very different people. I don't know if we can, by the way, have the audio working in a couple minutes, because there's another clip. The audio is better. It's better to watch. So they're very different people. Chuck Hagel was a sergeant in the Army. He fought in Vietnam, and he was previously a senator from Nebraska. Whereas Ash Carter was a physicist, a Rhodes Scholar, and he had previously been Deputy Secretary of Defense. And actually, over the course of his career, he had served in some capacity for 11 different Secretaries of Defense. So really, job today. Like I said, they're both very different people, but they're both good people to work for. They both have a good sense of humor. This is on a plane with Secretary Hagel, and I was giving him a speech at the time, and it seemed like he wasn't very pleased with it, so he said it wasn't really that bad. He was right, but he was a good sport. And then Secretary Carter, this is where we want to hit this play video board. Yeah, that's Seth Meyers. Those of you who don't know. He came and visited the Pentagon and did a sketch with Secretary Carter. Unfortunately, the sound isn't working. Otherwise, you hear him basically showing him around the office. That's the Ulysses S. Grant table where he sits with the chairman of Joint Chiefs every day. That's John Pershing's desk. That's like his secretary's desk. And then he's like, "You want to see something really cool? This is a direct line to President Obama." And then he asks him, "Do you want to bring it?" It's like, totally. The full clip of this is on YouTube. Just Google Seth Meyers /Carter. There's some like that Vladimir Putin impressions. It's pretty. In terms of what I've been actually able to do though in this job, I've written speeches across the country and around the world, probably 30-some states, maybe in 2 dozen countries almost. And we travel on like pretty interesting, I guess, planes. This is the Doomsday plane. This is the press cabin. And Hegel's talking to the press off the record after a trip to Poland and Germany. Back there. I got to write for some pretty different and sometimes pretty cool audiences. Those are the Golden State Warriors. Steph Curry's like right outside the frame. He was there, I swear. And so that's a nice perk. On a related note, on the campaign I wrote an introduction for the president for Willie Mays, which is like the coolest thing ever. I've also been able to write about some of the really interesting, cool tech weapon systems that kept our military on the cutting edge and still are doing that. That's me on the left, and that's Chuck Hagel in an F-35 stealth fighter jet. And then I've also been able to write about what we always talk about, our greatest asset, which is Secretary Carter giving a speech in front of a destroyer in San Diego to some sailors earlier this year. I've got to tell you, like traveling the world and seeing all these cool places and cool things and stuff like that, it's been really great for my Instagram feed. You can't beat like a helicopter ride on the president's helicopter, for example, or seeing the Roman Coliseum in the middle of the night because you just finished writing the speech for the next day and you have a couple hours still and you don't want to oversleep for the meeting with the secretary the next morning, so you decide to go to the Coliseum. It's really cool. But on a more serious note, I've been able to write some pretty both interesting for me, and that's how I see it as great, but also impactful for the country speeches. I've written speeches for Secretary Carter about that have kind of helped sort of build and rebuild bridges with Silicon Valley and America's kind of wider technology community. I've written speeches about what he calls the force of the future, kind of making us a more attractive institution for younger American future generations. Use some humor now and then. Hopefully it works. And then, sometimes I've gotten to make history. When we all combat positions to women about a year ago. Actually, I was literally a year ago, I was working on that speech. It was over Thanksgiving break, and I was here, and my mom was not, and I was not coming to help with Thanksgiving and stuff like that. But she gave me that because it was kind of a pretty cool thing. So in terms of what I would say to any of you who are interested in kind of doing this sort of work, or really just kind of maybe struggling to figure out what you want to do, or if you're frustrated about some of the things that you kind of have to do. I was definitely one of those people. Like I said, I didn't like English class. Sorry, Mrs. Devlin, if she's yes. But I love my teachers. But there were like pockets of things that I found interesting, and later on I kind of focused on this. So if I were to give you a few pieces of advice about, and you can either see it from a positive, light of kind of having you have the courage to do it, or if you want from a different sort of light of don't be afraid to do it, but to pursue what interests you, even if it may not pay as much as people will tell you it will, or if they think it's just it's a dead end path. You never know what kind of opportunities you can find or opportunities you can make two is I would say, don't be afraid to kind of take a risk, make a risky move. Go to Chicago and work for nothing and figure out a way to get by for 3 months and work your ass off, and then maybe you'll get hired and kind of be able to do what you want. It may not always pay off, and that's why you can't be afraid to get it wrong either. You're not going to be perfect. No one is. You're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. In fact, that's good. That's how you learn, obviously. But it's also how you learn what not to do. And sometimes making a mistake can even have a positive outcome later on. Someone who you didn't think you might have got a chance to meet otherwise, but then they'll help you get that next job or that next possibility or opportunity that you might want to seize and take your life in a different direction or something like that. And then when you do get it wrong, right? But it's really only by continuously pounding on the door to get someone to give you a chance, or continuing to try to prove yourself, or submit offense, or what have you. Get the opportunity, and then when you get that opportunity, it's up to you. So with that, does anyone have any questions?
Question?
Sorry if I went too long. I'll be hopping around if anyone has questions afterwards too. That's almost perfect.
Are you related to Daniel Sherman?
I certainly am. And he's lucky that I didn't use a particular picture in this lecture.
I think I saw him. I think I saw him. He's like younger.
I mean, there are a lot of pictures. Anything else?
We're actually,
Always that person who had a question and never asked it, and then keep on. Really great. Don't overstate
No,
it.
I think that could really impact countries and people in the United States.
What? Oh, pressure. Oh, yeah, totally. But so one of the things that's really nice is the fact that, I'm just this 28-year-old kid writing these kind of consequential speeches, but there are tons and tons of people backing me up, right up to the Secretary of Defense, and sometimes even people at the White House, review our speeches, both for accuracy and things like that, and making sure we don't start a war by accident. That would be exceedingly rare right now, but I'm doing the job. And that's really that's like accuracy we really strive for, and that's something where we feel pressure to not make a mistake and be sure that kind of everything we have used in sight is kind of all up down as actually accurate as possible. But yeah, totally. How can you not? Anything else?
This is what happened in Chicago. What was that interim job to keep you alive and well and here today?
That's a good question. It was a couple of things. First of all, a lot of political campaigns have something that's called supporter housing, where someone who maybe they're a donor to the campaign, or they just are a supporter for God knows whatever reason, they're a friend of the candidate or something like that. They will offer the spare bedroom in their house for someone to live in, for a volunteer on the campaign to live in while they're doing whatever they're doing for free. And so I was fortunate enough to benefit from supporter housing for those 3 months. And then I had some savings from some jobs I had in college and stuff like that. And then my parents were thankfully supportive as well.
well, I'd like to officially induct you into the Alumni Hall of Fame for inspiring the past, present, and future police.
Sorry, I wasn't funny.
If you have any questions for Aaron, please stick around for break. He's willing to stick around and answer any questions you might have. So thank you guys. Thanks, guys.